everyone, my name is Discourse and I'm scared for Warhammer. But is there hope? Maybe so. Let's talk about it. Oh boy, my favorite faction has been updated. I wonder what cool new stuff they've gotten. Let's find out. What the fuck? Ooh, Warhammer and fear for the future. Is there any pairing more iconic? I don't know, it feels pretty apropos. But sadly, the change to Warhammer that I want to talk about today has me absolutely terrified for its future. And this is something that I believe is a fundamental change to Warhammer, and that it beats out Finecast, exclusive models in boxes, every single price rise ever done. Yes, that's right. I believe that what I'm talking about today is even worse than Seasons. Ugh. And it's largely gone untalked about, so let's remedy that. As of today, the 8th of January 2022, a new Orc Boys kit will be released. And these models will be the new Orc Boys going forward. We already know what their sprues look like. People are playing with these orcs right now, and plenty of people have put them together. And this is because they were originally packaged as part of the Combat Patrol that was released earlier last year. They were exclusive to this Combat Patrol, in fact. Now, at the time, I did a video on the general orc release, and I was pretty upset at the time. Ping! But that was a few months ago, back in August in fact. And yes, future historians, if you are watching, Games Workshop did indeed release their codex a full 6 months before releasing the Orc Boys, outside of the Combat Patrol. No, I'm not sure how they quite get away with it. No one seems to have a problem with this. But sorry, anyway, I'll leave you to your space bingo or oxygen farming or whatever it is you get up to. And so yes, it was a couple of months ago that the Combat Patrol was released. But since then, I've done a little bit of reflecting. And I've also spoken to some internal sources placed at Games Workshop. And I've grown more and more concerned at how these Orc Boys herald a fundamental change to how Games Workshop design their models. And I believe that these changes will fundamentally alter the relationship that customers have with Games Workshop. And I hope that I am jumping at shadows here. I would much rather it be the case that Kevin Roundtree, for some inexplicable reason, hates orcs. Like he just detests them and wants them gone. But, well, as much as I sort of desperately want Kevin Roundtree to be trying to kill off the concept of joy, and I mean he is, we've talked about Seasons on the channel, I'm not convinced that that explains the orc release very well. And okay, I suppose I have teased you for long enough. I have edged too far. Okay, Discourse, what's your problem with these orcs anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked, hypothetical me, because there are 3 main problems. And let's take these in order of the least worst through to the absolutely fundamentally most worst thing ever to happen to Warhammer. So, the least worst thing about the new Orc Boys kit. The new Orc Boys kit comes with 1 less model than the old kit. So in this new box you get 10 Orc Boys, in the old Orc box you used to get 11 boys. And the new box even costs a whole $9 more than the old one. Even for Games Workshop, this feels bad. Like, seriously, this style of releasing. They're just blatantly selling less models for more, and it sucks, and it has not been acknowledged by enough people in the hobby. This value proposition is awful. And seriously, as a community, we need to acknowledge that this is bad for customers. No hype pieces, no articles about how cool the new orcs look, no. This box is a bad deal. If we can't agree that less models for more money is bad, I'm not sure if we can agree on much of anything. But that's only number 3 on the list here. That aside, let's go into the second problem. And this is monopose. 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 Okay, so that was probably the most annoying way I could have put this across. But yeah, monopose. I hate the fact that the new Orc Boys are monopose models. And if you're not aware of what that means, basically a monopose model is a model that cannot be customized or isn't designed to be customized or posed in various different ways. It is designed to be posed in a very specific way and locked to that configuration. So a monopose model is basically the opposite of a posable model. And these new orc boys are dreadfully, awfully, painfully limited models. Every single boy on this sprue is locked into a very characterful, oddly specific pose. And okay, I'm sure there are plenty of people who are slamming down their paintbrush and screaming at the TV. Monopose models, who cares? Get out of my face, discourse. What about metal models? They were monopose and they've been around since forever. Monopose models can look cool. And my response is to say, okay, hold on. Wow, you're really mean. Let me finish. So yes, metal miniatures are monopose. But you know what? Something happened in the mid-2000s. And that is the switch from metal miniatures to hard plastic for the vast majority of the Games Workshop line. And with the greater uptake of hard plastic, we started to see some benefits emerge for the hobby, because the hard plastic sprues led to more customization and more posability. Now, I'm not saying the Games Workshop were setting the world on fire in terms of what they were able to achieve with their hard plastic sprues, but at that stage, it was clear that the future lay in hard plastic. The goal was always to get away from the problems, from the monopose designs that could only be done in resin and metal. But Games Workshop these days seem to have doubled down on the monopose style. And admittedly, this has been happening for a while now with Games Workshop miniatures. I was recently putting together some Blissbarb archers, because as a Beastman player, I'm not satisfied with having but a single underpowered Chaos army. I wanted two. And I'll admit, the Blissbarb are very pretty models. They look amazing. They're super dynamic and the poses are great. And the aesthetic of the miniatures are great. As a concept, I love these. But let me tell you, they were possibly one of the worst assembling experiences I have ever had in my entire life. And I put together an entire 2,000 points worth of miniatures over a 24-hour period recently. Putting together 10 Blissbarb archers was worse than that experience. This isn't in the script, I'm just saying this now. It's just straight from my soul. God, these sprues, Games Workshop had optimized all the fun out of it. The models themselves have awkward and unintuitive splits. They were clearly designed to minimize the amount of space and plastic required for the sprues by a computer. Like, genuinely, we have hips attached to the tops of heads. We've got breasts attached to faces and hair attached to arrows. They are just not fun to figure out or put together. You just have to follow the instructions. That's it. You go from 1 to 10. A to Z. They have no soul. Conversely though, as a palette cleanser, after putting together the Blissbarb archers, I instead put together some bolt action miniatures. And wow, let me tell you, it was a blast from the past. It was like I'd walked back into 2008 Games Workshop. You were given a torso, some legs, some arms, and a gun. But when I was building these models, I got to do stuff. I got to move them around. I had to figure out what pose they were going to have. I had to engage with the assembly. I had to think about what I wanted my models to look like and how I would achieve that effect. And I had great fun as a result. With the Blissbarb, all I could do was follow instructions. Tedious. So you can see then that the new orc kits, by following in the footsteps of the Blissbarb archers, from the perspective of someone who enjoys assembly, the new orcs actually shake out to be a much inferior product, even when compared with some really old kits. Like, for example, the old Empire models or the old Dark Elf models. When you bought those kits, you get a lot of customization. Honestly, a little bit too much maybe. When you bought those models, you were handed a sprue that would allow you to build swordsmen, spearmen, halberdiers, all from the one kit, and you got to decide what to build. And do you know what? In my humble opinion, that takes far more sculpting skill to create. To make those kits so versatile and yet look coherent on the table is an art form. It didn't always work. It was hard to do. They didn't always get it right. But that's because it's much more difficult than simply designing a statue. And as interesting to look at as the Orc Boys are, they have a lot of problems. As models, they are clearly designed for painters. But, well, Warhammer is a game, a fact not usually acknowledged. And specifically, it is an army game. And that means you play with a lot of models. Lots and lots of repeated models. And generic poses work in an army game. And in fact, in totality, I would say that generic poses, so poses of a guy with a gun like that, or pointing forward, they actually look better when taken in totality than some of the weirdly specific poses that Blitzbarb Archers and the New York Boys have. And yes, the old models looked more static, less dynamic. But do you really want every other boy in your 100 strong army, I don't know, eating a burger or finding a penny on the ground or checking their shoe for dog? That, to me, looks far more distracting than 10 orcs with generic poses. I would much prefer the latter, no matter how fun the checking their shoe is. And I think that the objective of interesting poses can still be retained. I'm actually okay with these elaborate sculpts existing. You know, if they must. Boy, they can be hard to paint sometimes. But they should be reserved for special characters. Put them on named characters who only show up once on the battlefield. Those types of models suit elaborate and distinctive poses. They should contrast against the troops. They should be designed to stand out. They should be visible and special. Flex your statue construction skills there. Though, as a quick aside, if you're going to incentivize me to bring more than one general with my army, don't do it. And if you are going to do it, don't give me a dog pose like the Dark Eldar Archon model. Seriously, I hate that sculpt. Make the basic infantry kit basic. The clue is in the name here. Troops are the bread by which the sweet, sweet butter is spread upon. Troop models do not need to be elaborate. Elaborate models are distinctive. When brought as a large group, they are hard to read. They are very busy, and they make an army look incoherent. But look, Blitzbarb Archers sort of get away with this. And they do so because there's no variation in the weapons that they're armed with. They all have bows. Orcs do not. And this brings us to the worst problem of the new orcs. And that is that the new Orc Boys kit is forced into a mono loadout. Mono loadout. Orc Boys. Can you see the problem here? And it is this fact that means I will never ever buy one of these new orc kits. The models that are included in the new orc box kit come with very specific weapons. A selection of weapons that cannot be changed. So not only is customization of poses dead for orcs, but now we also have to wield the weapons the Games Workshop have mandated for us. And apparently they want us to use, well, 3 shooters, 5 sluggers, a power claw, and a special weapon. And that is beyond frustrating. I'm kind of losing my mind here. Can you tell that I'm upset about this? This actually makes the entire kit unusable, in my opinion. As in, these Orc Boys are not fit for purpose. Orc Boys are traditionally built to take all shooters or all sluggers. This box completely prevents this. If I had picked this box up and opened it up and found that these were my only options, I legitimately would return it to the store. And I would demand a refund. I would go full Karen on them. These Orc Boys don't work. These aren't game pieces, they're just statues for painting. They aren't fit for purpose in the context of the game. But this is entirely by design. Because if I want 10 shooter boys, as most of us should do, I have to buy 4 boxes of Orc Boys. But orcs are a horde army. I'll need dozens of these boxes. And then I'll have hundreds of chopper boys that I don't want or need, but will still have had to pay for. And Games Workshop aren't even pretending anymore. As they say in the Warhammer community post, quote, "You can take these lads as they come in the box, a combined arms unit, or get multiple boxes to specialize them in chopping or shooting. They don't even have the decency to act like they give a They are openly marketing this box as if it's the most natural thing in the world. And I suppose it is. And no one is calling them on this, apart from Pleasant Kenobi. And hardly anyone is upset about this. I feel like I'm standing alone in the desert here. We have watched Games Workshop progressively curtail options with each new release. For example, the entire Primaris range can't take jump packs on their HQs. Compare the old Space Marine kits with the new Primaris kits. The options used to be off the chart. So how is it then that the new kits have gotten worse? I mean, sure, they look good, there's more details on the molds, but they're worse in every other way for hobbyists. All those endless Space Marine releases this year, all those endless generic lieutenants and captains, they have obfuscated a certain point. I mean, sure, it's fun to make light of Games Workshop's constant focus on new Space Marines. And even I've done it a few times. But the really frightening part of these models, all 267 of them, probably, could have been achieved with a single customizable sprue. A single kit for every single one. All those models, each one sold separately, they could have been a single purchase. The last year of Space Marine lieutenants and captains could be made redundant with a single release. And hey, if they weren't beholden then to release constant Space Marine captains and lieutenants, maybe they would have had some time to build models for other factions too. But for what? What has this all been for? Because it's not just in service of creating models with interesting poses, is it? I mean, partly it is that Games Workshop have always wanted to cater to painters, but it's not the only thing. Because as always with Games Workshop, when you lift the rock, there is inevitably wood lice underneath. Sadly, not even this problem can be explained by Games Workshop simply wanting to make better looking products. They, of course, make money selling variations of the same model with different poses. And it's cheaper for them to do so. But there's another reason that they do this that is much less obvious. And that's to muscle out the bits market. They hate the bits market, and they have done so for a really long time. And bits are bits. They're bits from sprues that get resold on secondary websites. And Games Workshop hate the fact that you can buy parts from sprues and customization from third parties. Especially now when they're trying to sell their, to be honest, pretty garbage customization kits. Seriously, the bang for buck with these customization sprues are bad, really bad. When designing my Patreon tiers, I couldn't even use the customization sprue as the lowest tier name. Seriously, they were too expensive to use. You should go check it out to see what I mean. And maybe check out some of the member benefits as well. But yes, no matter how you slice it, the customization sprues are pretty poor value for money. They're a lot of money for not a lot of plastic. And therefore, Games Workshop, well, love them. And they hate bit sellers because they don't get a sniff of that money. And so the new monopose kits reflect Games Workshop's style of doing business. GW will purposely make the experience of customers worse so they can make sure to keep all the money. And the thing is, I was terrified that this was the future. That we would see a future of models locked into specific weapons and specific poses. That the only customization you would get would be those sold by Games Workshop. And that the models would no longer be fun to assemble. And I was seriously thinking to myself, can I even continue to enjoy the miniatures that Games Workshop put out, if that's the case? Because I don't think I can. If every future kit is like the Orc Boys, I really think I'd have to leave Warhammer. It just wouldn't be fun anymore. But then, a ray of hope.
He's amazing. Who is he? Is he Christ?
The new Eldar Guardian models were revealed, and weird belly button sculpting aside, seriously, I have no idea what to feel about that. They actually look good. Like, they actually look like they might be posable kits, where you can move the arms up and down, and have their head turning left and right. And even better, they can also be run as Storm Guardians and come with a heavy weapons platform. Huzzah! That's 2 for the price of 1. For Games Workshop, this is positively revolutionary. I mean, they were doing it back in 2004, but still, they've set the bar really low over the last decade. So I'm actually excited for this Guardian kit. The faction update is not the kiss of death, though I suspect we'll end up having to pay a lot more money for this kit. I mean, it's still Games Workshop after all. But at least Games Workshop have shown an inconsistency now. Some models are getting the Orc Boys or Blissbarb treatment, so pray emoji and tears for them. But others are getting the Guardian treatment. Oh. And I don't quite know why some factions are getting locked in the basement and others are being allowed access to the cookie jar, but at least there is a cookie jar. So it doesn't seem like Games Workshop have decided to fully embrace the darkness and basically sabotage all their new kits with 0 customization and 0 posability. So the orcs are not quite the disaster that I thought they would be. Although obviously it sucks for orcs. But there might still be hope for future releases. So I will be watching the new Eldar releases with interest. Because even though I don't play them, I want to know, is it worse for a faction to be updated by Games Workshop in 2022 than it is to languish without any attention for 12 or 15 years? Is getting a range refresh a bit like getting the monkey's paw? Sure, you get love and attention for 5 minutes, but it will leave you permanently scarred. Be careful what you wish for. Price rises on factions when they get an update was bad enough, but actively making a faction less fun to play, less fun to build, on top of the rising price was just a bridge too far. I just want to enjoy assembling models again, and if I find that from other companies, I'm gonna go there. And if you want me to keep a wary eye on the new Eldar releases, oh, and if you want to find out whether or not the new releases are any good, why not subscribe to the channel? And hell, why not check out my Patreon at patreon.com/discourseminiatures. It is only thanks to my patrons that you can see on the screen now that I'm able to produce the content that I do and spend the lots and lots and lots of time it takes to do so. So thanks everyone, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye!